right, let's talk about Hanukkah. I found this, I don't want to go on too long tonight. I found this is one of the Hanukkah services we had here when my father was still living. This is actually, it's been a while back. It's from 2009. Celebrate Hanukkah, a time of joy, praise, celebration, and a time of commitment and dedication. Like Jonathan was saying earlier, Hanukkah is about, one of the things it's about many things, is about the struggle against anti-Semitism. And I never would have imagined, especially after September 11th, that you would see such support in the United States for Islamist terrorism, but just overt anti-Semitism. And today I was kind of disturbed as Rand Paul. And I agree with Rand Paul is saying, it's like, well, we have free speech, but you're looking at what used to be considered, Harvard. Everyone's heard about Harvard. And they won't denounce people calling for the extermination of Jewish people. Could you imagine that that's where we're at today? And there's stories of Jewish students in these universities having to barricade themselves in rooms and hide from, raving mobs of anti-Semites. And it's like, well, why is this going on? How could after 75 years after World War?
That's gone beyond free speech.
Yeah, if you support terrorism or call for genocide, that's well. The problem isn't just. I guess people can say whatever they want, but when you have a university, a prestigious university, refusing to denounce that. And the thing is, with these schools as well, like I said, if you're, well, I'll give you an example. You have a conservative speaker go on campus, and these students get so irate that this, Ben Shapiro, for example, or Ann Coulter in the past. There's just been other notable conservative speakers where it's not safe for them to go and speak on these campuses, right? It's like, these people say words are violence. And yet, when it comes to people calling for the extermination of Jews, they say free speech, free speech, free speech. And people have graded Harvard, and Harvard's like one of the most places hostile to free speech in the world. So I think it's important for us in times like this to stand up and support the state of Israel. This year, of course, there's different calendars, but this year, of course, the way we observed Hanukkah was a couple weeks before. But I guess on the regular Gregorian calendar, they attacked Israel and killed like 1,200 people on the 50th anniversary on their calendar for the Yom Kippur War. And what holiday did it fall on this time? The Simchat Torah, the 8th day of Sukkot. And now it looks to me like, and this is a good thing, but Israel is now, they're destroying Hamas. And we should rejoice in that, And that's the thing that we see in the story of Hanukkah. We see these atrocities. You see people suffering so much, but finally people uniting together, taking a stand for the Torah and fighting back, and God giving a victory. I don't have any ill will towards the Arab Israelis or Palestinians or the inhabitants of Gaza, but it's this wicked, demonic, Hamas organization. That's what, there's no way we shouldn't equivocate about it. Like I saw this woman, is what's the hill, and she's like, oh, well, from the river to the sea, that's not necessarily a call for genocide, when it is. It's complicated. It's not complicated. It's not complicated. We cannot accept, or condone or look the other way at the evil of anti-Semitism like that. We're obligated to stand up. What did Yeshua say? What did Yahweh? What did God say? Whoever, about Israel, whoever you bless is blessed, and whoever, curses you is cursed. We should bless the Jewish people, pray for them. And that's another thing I liked about President Trump, is he was a very firm in his support of Israel, but he also reached out to the Arabs. I was so hopeful. That's one of the things I liked about President Trump. He's bringing Arabs and Israelis together and establishing peace. And now look what's happened. It's just grieves me to see this, and I'm hoping that we can have returned to better days soon. But we have to stand up for truth. We have to stand up for righteousness. We have to stand up and speak against evil like anti-Semitism. We need to remember that on Hanukkah. Hanukkah is about the Jewish people standing up against hate. So this is a little flyer that Dad made. We need to rejoice in the Lord and have seasons of gladness and praise. We can't let everything out in the world get us down. So it's got some notes. I'm going to read these things that Dad put here. Brother Philip Mystic's Hanukkah message. A time to rise up. Pastor, like the old priest Mattathias, challenges us tonight to become a light to our families and our friends, our neighbors, and to our nation. May the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, burn in our hearts as he did in the prophets Jeremiah, and cause us to rise up against all unrighteousness and to take on the servant heart of Yeshua as we minister in love to those around us. May we not keep silent but speak the truth, always, and thereby bring many souls in the kingdom before Yeshua returns for his bride. So, the servant heart, that's what we need to have. How many people, sometimes pastors don't have servant hearts like they ought to, right? In certain churches, it's about me. It needs to be about the Lord, about serving other people. So, Marianne, I guess, and Dad wrote a synopsis about the story of the beginning of the Maccabean revolt. It says, it was on the 15th day of the month of Kislev, which is December, that the messengers of King Antiochus set up an idol on the altar of Yahweh and had incense burnt in its honor. They gave orders that the people of Judea must forsake the law and the covenant, profane the Sabbath, and pollute the sanctuary. Many chose rather to die than to forsake the holy covenant. When confronted by the king's officers to submit to the king's wishes, Mattathias, an old Levitical priest, answered and spake with a loud voice, though all the nations that are under the king's dominion obey him and fall away, each one from the religion of his fathers, yet will I and my sons and my brethren walk in the covenant of our fathers. Yahweh forbid that we should forsake the law and depart from our fathers, either to the right hand or to the left. It seems to... I don't think they used the sacred name during the time of the Maccabean revolt. We don't know exactly when it happened, but in the Old Testament period, the Jewish people spoke the sacred name Yahweh. It was just common. It's used like 6,000 times in the Old Testament. The other name for God that's used commonly is Elohim. I think it's used like 4,000 times. I'm not sure the exact number, but the name Yahweh is used like 6,000 times in the Old Testament. So obviously they're using it frequently and commonly, right? But about 200 BC, they think there was a rabbi, called Simon the Just, right? Simon the Just said, we shouldn't even utter the name of Yahweh, lest we defile it. Accidentally. It says, thou shalt not take the name of Yahweh your God in vain. Therefore, let's not even speak the name of Yahweh. Let's say Hashem or Adonai or, some other substitution. It's just called circumlocution, right? And that became the standard practice. And that was the practice that Jewish people observed at the time of Yeshua. But that's a Jewish tradition. It's not necessarily biblical, even though it was practiced by Jews at the time of Jesus. So he would have said Adonai or Hashem or some other thing. So it's doubtful at that time that Jews, probably at 200 BC, they stopped using the sacred name. So Mattathias became inflamed with the zeal of Yahweh, and he slew the wicked priests who agreed to offer wicked sacrifice before the pagan god, as well as killing the king's official. And he pulled down the altar that had been erected to King Antiochus. Mattathias ran through the city with a loud voice, saying, whoever is zealous for the law and maintaineth the covenant, let him follow me. So he and his sons fled into the mountains, and they went about pulling down the heathen altars. And they rescued the law out of the hands of the pagans. And the city of Jerusalem was then reclaimed, and the temple was purified. It was a long struggle and many battles before they were able to achieve that goal. And it was really humanly possible, right? I'll mention it now. There's a talent of Modine. I mean, who's even today, Modine? It's still there, But it seemed to be a place of no real consequence, right? It's a small town. Insignificant in the eyes of, many. Same thing happened with Jesus. It's like, well, and his own disciples. I've met the Messiah, the Son of God. Well, who is it? It was Jesus, the son of Joseph from Nazareth. From Nazareth? You gotta be kidding me. Nothing good can come out of Nazareth. It's the same case with Modine. It just wasn't a big city. It's just a small little village. Yeah. And, but they're going through town by town, city by city. You must forsake the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You must forsake the Torah. You must show your allegiance to the Olympiad gods and to Greek culture and Greek practice. So they came to this village, and who was Mattathias? He's just a village Levite or priest, I guess the city elder. He had his sons, his 5 sons. They might have just been like Jesus. They might have been carpenters, because Judas the hammer. Maccabee means the hammer, and some people thought, well, maybe he was using a hammer as in his craft. So it wasn't from a big city like Jerusalem. It's just from a smaller town. And, a lot of people will, when things get hard and difficult, a lot of people compromise. But sometimes you get some people who will stand up. I think that's why we need heroes to inspire us. And I think people are looking around for leadership. There's nobody there to lead the people. And they finally found men of courage in the town of Modine. So after he began this resistance, this revolt, they had to flee into the mountains. They had a secret, hide out in the mountains, from which they would do like guerrilla attacks. And like I said, they started winning battles, and that's how they didn't have weapons. They have swords, they have shields, they have armor. They fought with farming implements. That's all they had. And eventually they were able to defeat the Greeks and liberate the temple. But it wasn't an easy process. Then the city of Jerusalem was then reclaimed. The temple was cleansed and purified. The nine candle menorah is a symbol of all that took place and of God's everlasting covenant with his people. So the menorah that we see there displayed, that's the biblical menorah, right? It's a 7-branch lampstand. Technically, it's like the one that Tabitha has. This is an oil lamp, and I'm kind of disappointed that glue didn't stick. I could give a demonstration. It has the oil lamps at the top of each of the poles. But a Hanukkah usually is with candles, and you have 8 days, so you have a candle for each day, and we have a candle in the middle which used to light the other candles. Josephus talks about Hanukkah, and even at that time, even though a lot of these practices, including the lighting of the menorah, came from how they practiced Sukkot at that time, as I talked about this past Sabbath, nonetheless, Hanukkah, the word Hanukkah in Aramaic and Hebrew means dedication. But even at the time of Josephus, it was called the Festival of Lights, right? When Yeshua says, "I am the light of the world," he's saying that in the context of Sukkot, because they also lit the menorahs during Sukkot. But this practice is carried over into Hanukkah. And even at the time of, apparently, if it's the time of Josephus was just 20, 30 years after the time of Yeshua. So they're already calling it the Festival of Lights, right? We have the light. We need to shine the light. And part of the tradition of the menorah is a way for the Jewish people to boldly proclaim and celebrate their Jewish identity. So what they would do is you put the Hanukkah menorah out. You don't hide it. You put it out where people can see it, right? There's this one, what was it, Shabbat? I forget the name of this organization, but, a few years ago, they go all out with Hanukkah menorahs during Hanukkah. They like have a car with a giant menorah on the top of it, drive around through the town, stuff like that. And it's like, let's just go out and celebrate that we're Jewish people. And then now, what happened? These protesters like knocking down menorahs, and even though people aren't overtly celebrating Hanukkah like that, in this climate we have right now, what's going on is it's Marxism. This is crazy. But how the Marxists look at everything, they don't care about it's the prism of Marxism, which is it's a system of oppression. And what they say is, this class struggle in Marxism. So with this ideology, you have the oppressor and the oppressed. And so all these Marxists look at Israel, and it's like, well, the Jewish people are the oppressors, and the Palestinians are oppressed, and that legitimizes their hatred of the Jewish people. And plus, they look at them as these are white people. Of course, Arabs are white too. Actually, they're two offshoots of Abraham, right? They're all Semitic people. It's just fundamentally, it's just different religions. They both claim to be Abrahamic. And yet they're attacking Jewish people. We have to stand up for the Jewish people, right? And celebrate Hanukkah. So that's why we have a 9-candle menorah. And then, in conclusion, I'm going to talk a little bit more. We'll end up at 7. Tonight, perhaps Yeshua will impress upon you the need to cleanse and purify your own temple, your body, your soul and mind, and your earthly home in order to be prepared for the victory and win the battles we face on the daily battles. Let me read it again. And your earthly home in order to prepare for victory in the battles we face on a daily basis. That does seem to be the case, doesn't it? Like every day is a battle, it seems like, sometimes. But every day we need to rejoice in the Lord. Rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice. All right? That's why Hanukkah is a time of celebration. We're going to have joy, and we're going to walk in victory. We're not going to let things get us down. Living here in a pluralistic society that daily labors at destroying every Living here in a pluralistic society that daily labors at destroying every vestige of Christianity from the public forum. That does seem to be the case, right? Yield to the move of the Holy Spirit in your heart and surrender to Yeshua's bidding as Mattathias did. Join us as we seek to make our lives a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto Yahweh, which is our reasonable service. So, the earlier day of Hanukkah, and it's important. It's important for us to remember those who fought, those who suffered, and those who died. We mentioned the story of the 7 sons of this woman and how they were martyred one by one. The king was torturing them to get them to violate their commitment to the Lord, right? To the Torah, to break faith with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And we also had the story of Eleazar, who was also martyred. This is second Maccabees chapter 6 and 7. Second Maccabees 6 and 7. And I recommend people read both first and second Maccabees. And in second Maccabees, I want to go back. I want to look at the story of Mattathias. But you have these two men. One suffered and died for his faith in the Lord, but the others fought back. But if you read second Maccabees, well, listen to what it says here. So the author's recounting how people suffered and died. But he says, "Now I urge those who read this book not to be depressed by such calamities, but to recognize these punishments were designed not to destroy." Excuse me. Start again. "Now I urge those who read this book not to be depressed by such calamities, but to recognize that these punishments were designed not to destroy, but rather discipline our people. In fact, it is a sign of great kindness not to let the impious alone for long, but to punish them immediately." So, if you read First Maccabees and Second Maccabees, this time of persecution was preceded by apostasy. People became worldly. People became indifferent. People wanted to assimilate from Jewish culture to Greek culture, right? They started dressing like the Greeks. One of the things that happens is, if you read the story of the the 7 sons is they don't answer the king, even though they know Greek. They speak to him in Hebrew or Aramaic or both, right? We're going to speak our Semitic language. We're going to speak our ancestral language. We're not, because they're trying to totally annihilate everything about the Jewish way of life. So it was considered, upwardly mobile and acceptable and admirable to leave behind, all these old Jewish traditions and to accept a new way of sophistication, become Greek, assimilate the Greek. And actually, some people think that Antiochus, from his perspective, he's helping the Jewish people out. He's modernizing them, right? That's how he looked at it. He's doing all these terrible things, but from his twisted way of thinking, he thought, I'm going to benefit Jewish society by having them abandon these old customs and superstitions that are inhibiting them and let them come to a wider view of the world through the Greek perspective, right? But there was sin, there was wickedness, there was worldliness, there was neglecting the things of God. And we see it going on today too. It's distressing, but God can bring about a mighty revival. And what is he saying here? God punished the people for apostasy and brought a great revival too. For in the case of the other nation, the Lord waits patiently to punish them until they have reached their full measure of their sins. But he does not deal with that way with us, in order that he may not take vengeance on us afterwards when our sins reach their height. Therefore he never withdraws his mercy from us. Though he disciplines us with calamities, he does not forsake his own people. Let what we have said serve as a reminder, and let us go on briefly with the story. So here are all these terrible things that are happening. We need to remember God is in control. He's with us, and he's going to bring us through it, and there's going to be a time of great blessing. He's bringing us through these tribulations to purify, cleanse, and strengthen us, right? So I guess I'll close with the story of Mattathias, and then we'll go on into a time of fellowship. So one of the interesting things that happens is if you read chapter 1 of First Maccabees, it starts with Alexander the Great, the famous Alexander the Great, conquered from Greece all the way to India, North Africa, parts of Arabia. It seemed like no army could withstand him, and yet he died suddenly, just like at 33 years old. So then after some time passed, Antiochus comes into power, and Jews are assimilating into pagan culture, but then he decides he's just going to wipe out anybody that's Torah observant. Goes to the temple, he profanes it. And interestingly, there's a story of Mattathias. It says in those days, because there's all this terrible things going on in the temple. The Greeks put an image of Zeus in the Holy of Holies. They sacrificed a pig on the altars. They had these debauched ceremonies and worshiping idols and pagan gods in the most holy place, the temple of Jerusalem. So it says, in those days, Mattathias, the son of John, the son of Simeon, of the family of Jehoram, he moved from Jerusalem and settled in Moedim. He had 5 sons, John named Gadi, Simon called Thassi, Judas called Maccabeus, Eleazar called Abiran, and Jonathan called Aphus. He saw the blasphemy that had been committed in Judah and Jerusalem, and he said, alas, that I was born to see this, the ruin of my people, the ruin of my holy city, and to live here when it is given over to the enemy, the sanctuary to the aliens. Her temple has become like a person without honor. Her glorious vessels have been carried into exile. It's talking about menorah and other things. Her infants have been killed in her street. They were killing little boys that they were circumcised, the Greeks were. Her youths by the edge of the sword of the foe. What nation has inherited her palaces and has not seized her spoils? So it says, Mattathias and his sons, they tore their clothes, they put on sackcloth and mourned greatly. So he goes back to Moedim to see what happened. We need to look at the state of our nation and pray, right? We should see what's going on. Don't hide away, don't ignore it. Confront the issues and pray about it. But then that's not enough. We have to take action, right? Prayer is powerful. Yeshua taught that in the power of prayer, but sometimes we need to take a stand. So I'll read this and then we'll conclude. This is the story of Mattathias. It's kind of just short. This is chapter 2 of 1 Maccabees, verse 15. The king's officers who were enforcing the apostasy came to the town of Moedim and made them offer sacrifice, the sacrifice to the Greek gods, and to Antiochus Epiphanes as Zeus on earth. Many from Israel came to them, and Mattathias and his sons were assembled. Then the king's officer spoke to Mattathias as follows: "You are a leader, honored and great in this town, and supported by sons and brothers. Now be the first to come and do what the king commands, as all the Gentiles and the people of Judah and all those who are left in Jerusalem have already done. Then you and your sons will be numbered among the friends of the king, and you and your sons will be honored with silver and gold and many gifts." The love of money is the root of all evil. One of the problems we have in society is that people sell out for money. Don't sacrifice your integrity. But Mattathias answered and said in a loud voice, "Even if all the nations that live under the rule of the king and obey him, and if they've chosen to obey his commandments, every one of them abandoning the religion of their ancestors, I and my sons and brothers will continue to live by the covenant of our ancestors. Far be it from us to desert the Torah and the ordinances. We will not obey the king's words by turning aside from our religion to the right hand or to the left." When he finished speaking all these words, a Jew came forward in the sight of all, who was willing to sacrifice on the altar of Modin, according to the king's command. Apparently this person was not a priest or Levite, but he's a Jewish person. It's like, if you won't sell out, I will. When Mattathias saw it, he burned with zeal in his heart, and his heart was stirred. He gave vent to righteous indignation, righteous anger. He ran and killed him on the altar. At the same time, he killed the king's officer who was forcing him to sacrifice, and he tore down that pagan altar. Thus he was burned with a zeal for the law, as Phinehas did against Zimri, the son of Salu. That's in the book of Numbers. Then Mattathias cried out in the town with a loud voice, saying, "Let everyone who is zealous for the Torah and supports the covenant come out with me." Then he and his sons fled to the hills and left all that they had in the town. At that time, many who were seeking righteousness and justice went down to the wilderness to live there, they and their sons, their wives, their livestock, because trouble pressed upon them heavily round about. So people came to him, right? You have leadership, you take a stand, that attracts other people who are willing to stand with you, and we need to do that. So chapter 4, that's chapter 1 and 2. Chapter 3 and 4 is the stories of battles, the battles and hardships that they endured. And finally, in chapter 4, verse 36, and I read that this past Sabbath, victory against impossible odds was won. They went to the temple and they cleansed it. It had to be dedicated again because it had been profaned. All those objects of perversion and wickedness they threw out. And that altar had been profaned, doubly profaned. It had been used to worship and sacrifice to wicked gods, which are devils and not true God. It's not true God at all, right? Or anything worthy of being worshipped. Wicked gods. And not only that, they used an abominable animal, unclean. And they sacrificed a pig, a detestable animal to the Jewish people. And they sacrificed a pig on the altar of the Lord and poured pig's blood all over the temple to profane it. So they went, they cleansed it, and it specifically says one of the things they did is they relit the menorah. Apparently they had to rebuild and relight the menorah, which had been taken away and stolen. And you know what? When the devil tries to take things away from him, it's like it says, David, the Lord said this to David, pursue and recover all, right? The Lord is going to restore unto us double. And actually, in the end, even though they went through this terrible, period, they were stronger than they were in the beginning. Right? At the beginning, people were falling away. Only a small number of people were faithful to the Lord. And those people became a target. Seek out those few people who are holding, fast the old-fashioned ways and kill them. Just wipe them out. But at the end, Judea was a nation devoted to Yahweh and His Torah. And these Greeks, which sought out to destroy the Bible, the Torah, and the Jewish people, were defeated. And the Jewish people have thrived unto this day, dealing hardships. I mentioned this before. I was in the land of Israel, in Galilee. Galilee's nice. I think that you don't have so much urban development, so you have the pristine countryside, the rolling hills and farmlands and the lake. It's beautiful. Very beautiful place. And of course I travel all over Israel, and I was thinking, this is a nice little country. The people seem to be friendly for the most part, just regular people. And it's like, in the natural, it doesn't make any sense. Why the whole world is in this state of constant consternation about a small country the size of New Jersey. In the natural, in the human way, it doesn't make any sense. But this is a spiritual conflict. This is about God's chosen people. About the people that are, covenanted to Him. The descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's about God, His Torah, and it's about Satan and forces of wickedness. And look how many times the devil has tried to destroy the Jewish people. Under Pharaoh, under Haman, under Antiochus Epiphanes. And, there's still people, and that generation is getting older and passing away. But that, Adolf Hitler trying to do his final solution. And we've, throughout our lives, we've encountered people who fought in that terrible conflict. And now it's still going on. And it's the thing, it's just, it's shocking. It's like, how could we see a rise of anti-Semitism? And it's like socially acceptable. But we're going to stand for truth. We're going to stand for light. We're going to stand for what's right. We're going to stand with the Jewish people. We're going to stand on the Torah. Right? That's what the whole conflict was about. They're trying to get rid of the Torah, and they're trying to punish people who are Torah observant. But they stood up, and they remained free, and they preserved the Torah for us. Talks about that in 2 Maccabees. I mentioned that already.